Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Vintage Motocross Radio. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. I'd like to thank the sponsors that make this show possible. Vintco, keep the ride going. Amsoil, the first in synthetic oil since 1973. Nightmare Racing, the finest reproduction Kawasaki plastic on the planet. Full Circle Racing, rims, spokes, lacing, and truing for your vintage and modern bikes. I'd also like to thank Motion Pro for all your specialized tools, controls, and cables. Preston Petty Products, the legend continues. Also at this time, I'd like to announce my guest for next week, September 20th, will be three-time national champion Tony DiStefano. My guest this morning is the owner and curator of the New England Motorcycle Museum in Rockville, Connecticut. He is also the owner of a very successful pre-owned motorcycle store there in Rockville. This past Wednesday on the Discovery Channel, his new television pilot was released entitled Kaplan America. It's my pleasure to have as my guest this morning, Mr. Ken Kaplan. Ken, are you there?
Joe, yes, I am, and I'll definitely be here next week, too. Big Tony D fan. I actually I had the pleasure of racing with him at Broome Tioga Motorsports, kind of like by accident at back when I was doing the Nationals. They always had an amateur day the day before.
Yeah.
And I went out there, and I went out in the wrong class. I went out with the vet class, and I see the 111 in front of me. Who was it? But Tony D. And I was a student of his too. I actually took his motocross school at Unadilla and Southwick when I was riding Suzuki's back in '88. So big Tony D fan. Had the chance to ride with the champ. He actually crashed right in front of me in the corner. So I did beat him that moto, but I don't know if it was. We won't call it fair and square.
Tony D is a great champion. I've been trying to get him. Actually, I was supposed to do a live interview with him at Christmas time when I was back east in New Jersey, but we finally connected yesterday, and I'm looking forward to having him on the show next Sunday. But right now, I've got Ken Kaplan with me. First of all, Ken, congratulations on the premiere of Kaplan America Wednesday night. It was extremely entertaining, and we're going to be talking a lot more about that a little later in the show. What I want to know, Ken, is where did your journey begin with dirt bikes?
Oh, I started very early on in Clifton, New Jersey, when I was 2 years old.
Whoa, back up. Did you just say Clifton, New Jersey?
Yeah, I'm a New Jersey boy.
I never knew that, Ken.
999 Main Street. That was my family homestead. It was a four-unit, four-family house with a retail floor showroom on the first floor that had a bicycle shop in it. And my grandparents lived there, and we lived down the street a little ways. And my dad, I'm a third-generation rider and racer. My grandfather on my mom's side actually raced a flat track over in England.
Okay.
And my dad actually was a big-time rider in the Triumphs and Harleys. And actually, he started the whole motorcycle sales thing. He used to go out to Florida, buy Harleys in the wintertime and bring them up here and resell them. So that was kind of a little business that he was kind of an entrepreneur. I got it from him, I think. He rode Harleys. He was a member of an MC, a motorcycle club, and did some street racing, and ultimately gave up his street riding when we were born, but supplemented that like a lot of dads do by buying a mini bike. And I have vivid Technicolor memories of riding on the gas tank of a mini bike on the sidewalks in New Jersey, because it's a concrete jungle there, right? We're literally 10 miles from New York City. So,
I know exactly where you're talking about, Ken. Exactly.
Yeah. So vivid memories of that. My older brother was riding it on his own by the time he was like 4. So we ended up moving to Northborough, Massachusetts, and I remember the bike that we had was a kind of a $20 mini bike special, Briggs & Stratton motor probably, or a Kohler or something like that, a little frame. And there was a bicycle. There was a bike shop called Brown's Cycle that I have these. We used to go there. Like all me and my brother wanted to do was go to Brown's Cycle, because they had mini bikes and all kinds of ATVs and that kind of stuff there, and go-karts. So I remember he bought a purple framed mini bike with a cheetah colored seat on it. It was, and I remember the first time I rode it, it was way faster than the other one. It was like an 8-horse. I ended up crashing on it. We happened to live going from the concrete jungle. My parents bought us up to Mass, where it was a rural area, Northborough, Mass, and there was a big farm behind us, like an 80-acre farm, and they hadn't developed the area, so it was a dirt road that we used to get to ride on. So we rode the wheels off of that thing, and then in 72, I got a Yamaha GT80 for Christmas. That's another vivid Technicolor memory. These are the motor very early on. I was hooked. So all we would do on I think the reason I did as good as I did in motocross is I raced for almost 40 years, and I've won 16 championships at the expert and vet level in motocross. I won 4 Supercross and championships, and I've also won a pro hare scramble race, the first hare scramble race I ran, but that's another story. But so from very early on, that GT80 Yamaha's like one of the best memories of my life was getting that at Christmas. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and I remember like it was yesterday. They were like, "No, we got like socks and underwear and a few different things." My dad was like, "You know, in the springtime when I get my tax return, we'll get the bike." And I remember almost having tears in our eyes. We were so bummed. And then he goes in the bedroom and rolls the bike out. Man, I remember like it was yesterday. And that feeling of a kid getting a bike. I know what it's like. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I also know what it's like having a kid's bike stolen. So I had my bike stolen from me when I was in my 20s, and then recently at the motorcycle shop. So these vivid Technicolor memories are a big part of who I am today.
Tell me this, Ken. Tell me a little bit about your early motocross years. In other words, when did you first begin on a full-size bike, and what kind of bike did you have?
We moved up from the GT80. Again, more vivid memories. Fleming's Motorsports in Enfield, Connecticut. Going in there and looking at all the rows of new Suzukis. I was 10 years old. In 1975, we were at Fleming's, had a display at a fair, and it was a green grass route, and they had I remember the green grass in the fair and the brand new row of Suzukis, and there was a TM100 in there. It was a leftover, a 74, the yellow tank with I think it was a green stripe and white number plates, and I was like, it was brand new, and my Yamaha was destroyed. We had rode literally, when I say rode the wheels off that thing, he would fill up the tank, and we'd come back when it was empty and say, "Dad, fill it up again," you know? One of the reasons I love Yamaha so much, that Yamaha is bulletproof. But so I got that TM100, and we joined this club called the Enfield Mini Bike Club, which of course is all condos now and shut down long ago, like every place else we used to ride around here. So, and when we were at the Enfield Mini Bike Club, that's where I got my introduction to field games. We raced. There was a motocross track there, but they also did field games, boardwalk, barrel pull, the sack race. They did some trials there too. So there was a bunch of really cool dads and maybe 50 or 100 kids that were involved, and it was just some of the best, not some of, the best times of my childhood were riding mini bikes and dirt bikes with my friends and family, and the relationship with my dad, he was like my best friend. And
so tell me, Ken, what was the first big full-size bike that you raced in, I guess 75 or 76?
Yep, in 1975, that TM100, we went from the Enfield Mini Bike Club. I did really good there. We went to I was only 10 years old, and we went to Southwick, the national track, and we weren't really well connected in the motocross community yet, and we didn't know that there was a club for kids called the New England Mini Cycle Association. We went right to NESC, and I remember being my first race. I'm on the line at Middleborough, and we went with white plates. So everybody thought I was an expert. You're supposed to have black plates at a novice.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. You know, my heart was beating through my chest, and we're lining up for practice. And the guy's like, "You an expert?" I'm like, "No, it's my first time here." And I used to battle it out for last place the first season with a kid on a Hodaka 100. I remember those are more vivid Technicolor memories. You know, I was literally 10 years old racing with 15, 16, 18-year-old kids. I was a big kid, so I kind of fit in. You know,
Sure.
I was always a little bit bigger than most of the kids made, so I looked like a blonde. I was just like, I remember spitting. I had a helmet, like an old Bell open base with one of those clip-on mouth guards, and I remember spitting in the helmet and forgetting I had the helmet on while I was on the line because I was so nervous, you know. And so I got my ass kicked the first couple seasons, and then I started picking it up, and I was running, you know, maybe mid-pack, and then on 76, my older brother, a big part of the story, he raced too. He got a RM100, and he was winning races. We raced together in the 100 class, and then in 79, my dad upgraded me to an RM100. I was riding the 74 RM in 75, 76, 77, and 78. So by the time, I mean, it was pretty clapped out. You know, we had worn out a frame, and he ended up switching frames with he bought a frame that had laid down shocks, so it kind of looked up to speed. We didn't have a lot of money, so we always we were like the guys that would turn our tires around backwards and,
Sure.
take our chains off and cook them in I vivid memories of cleaning our chains in 1 gallon gas cans and then putting them on the stove and cooking them in old motor oil to kind of revive them, And,
Yeah.
we made do with whatever we had. I used to, when I was 15 years old, when I had my R100, I used to take the cylinder off and I used to do my own motor work. I'd take the cylinder head and jug off and bring it to school in a brown bag and polish the ports with emery cloth in shop class, And I used to do a top end on that like every 5-6 hours. So we made do with what we had. I'd literally run a tire would be like a whole season, and there'd be kids showing up with Works Performance shocks and, Simmons forks and rolling up in motorhomes. And we rolled up like Sanford and Son in a Buick Century with a 3-wheel trailer. And I was just glad to be there. And from the beginning, those are the people that became my family and friends, the motocross people. And some of them are lifelong friends, like Chris Kelly, the Wizard. I've been racing with him since the 80s, and we were at Unadilla racing together 2 weekends ago. So my best lifelong friends are from the motorcycle community, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And then also I have a lot of friends in the MC community. I was that's later in the story. I was a full patch brother of a 1% club at one point in my life after in between the motocross thing lasted. I had a lot of injuries and I took a little break, and then I ended up getting involved with street riding and Harleys and that thing. That's a whole other part of the story. The motocross has and always will be a huge part of my life. And probably 30 to 50% of the bikes you see on our channel are vintage motocross bikes because that's what I love. It brings me back to that day. When I get a GT80 and restore it, I go back to that spot.
Oh, Ken, you're preaching to the choir here between me and the people that listen to the show. We all have that touch of nostalgia in us, and for us to go back there and work on stuff like that, it brings back the best times in our lives. And obviously, your story began with a very humble beginning, but you've got great memories from that. But Ken, let's move on to something that's a little more up to date, a little more modern, and it's just an amazing facility. I want to talk to you about, of course, the New England Motorcycle Museum.
Before we do that, I want to summarize some of my racing career because that's really a big part. There were a lot of injuries in 1980. I got my amateur plates. I won 4 motos in the novice class, and the next weekend I snapped my leg in half. And I came back in 82, got an RM250, then got run over, put my finger through a sprocket, got a bone infection, almost lost my finger, got really, really sick. I remember having like a 105-degree temperature and couldn't even move my eyes, like it almost killed me. Then in 84, I tore my ACL on a KX250, all in the amateur class. In 85, I was riding vintage 82, 83 Huskies and beating the guys on the new ones. So Husqvarna gave me a CR250 and a CR500 for free. And I think that's when I got hooked up with Tony D because he was running the Husqvarna training program. So, and the Huskies kept on breaking. I was a pretty fast amateur, and I was a big guy. I was 220 and racing motocross. The bikes kept on breaking. And so I gave them the bikes back, and I bought a CR500 and then won 9 out of the last 11 motos in the NESC. The NESC is that's where John Dowd, JoJo Keller, Doug Henry, Jimmy Ellis, all the fast guys.
Oh, yeah, the talent pool is deep up there in New England. It always has been.
So in 86, I got that was the year Doug Henry and Todd Rashad were battling for the amateur championship in the 125s, and me and Russ Detson were battling for the championship in the open amateur, and I was just destroying everybody on that 500. The thing was so awesome. That's why I had to mention this because it's a big part of my life today. We're still riding the 500s. My son's riding an 89 CR500, and we raced together on the 500s. My son's 21, and I, off the couch after not racing for a year, and he's been riding and training and everything, I managed to, in a 5-lap moto at Unadilla, thankfully the track was smooth, otherwise he would have smoked me, but he only beat me by 12 seconds. He got third, and I got fourth. So it was awesome to be able to turn that onto the next generation. And a lot of what I do with bikes is I want the next generation to get involved with this. I know you're going to want to ask about events. I'm big time into the mini bike events, trying to get kids into it. But so I got my expert plates in '87 and rode the Southwick National. I remember Hanno was at the end of his career. I remember hanging with him for a few laps at Southwick. being on the line at the Giant Stadium Supercross and looking up on the big screen. Here I am with my bone stock. I'm talking bone stock down the tires, chains, the sprockets, oil in the forks and everything. 87 RM 250, an 88-year-old hammered bike. And I look up on the screen and there's Rick Johnson on one side and JoJo Keller on the other. And I'm like, holy shit, this is the big time, And of course, I didn't qualify. Probably should have. I was a privateer, and it's tough to get in there. So, but I did get a second place in a pro class arena cross race, and I did compete in the nationals at Mount Morris, Southwick, Broome, Tioga, and Unadilla. I tried to I never qualified for a national, unfortunately, but I did make the main program.
Sure.
And, I was in all the qualifiers. So racing, I compound fractured my ankle on a street bike in '88, and there bones sticking out both sides of my ankle. And that was pretty much the end of that. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to ride again. Eventually that healed, and a couple years later I got back into it. In 1990 I came back and did my first. I said, let me try off-road racing. Motocross I got a lot of injuries, so let me try. And I went to I tried to sign up for the B class because I'd never done off-road racing. Like, you had an AMA pro license, you need to ride the A class. So I joined the A class, and I went out on a YZ 490 off the couch, and I actually won the pro class. And I was like, well, that was a pretty cool experience. So I've done a fair amount of hare scrambles, mostly motocross. I won 4 championships in Supercross indoors in the Vet Expert 30 plus and 40 plus at Mototown. So won a total of 16 championships in the Expert or Vet Expert class, and including the one that I cherish the most, I think, is the NESC 2015. I won the 50-plus expert class, with guys like Camilio and Martin and Stetson and Vic O'Brien. Like, the NESC vet class is stacked, and some of the fastest vet riders in the country are there. But I also, in my 40s, in the NEMA series, I won championships against guys. Literally, I was old enough to be their grandfather. I was 45, and I'm racing against 16 and 18-year-olds. So the vet riding has been a huge part for me of my life, and I've never missed a Southwick National in 30 years. I've been to every one. And when I go there, I feel like I'm going home. I feel like those are my people. When I go to Unadilla, those are my people.
Yeah.
I feel more at home there than anywhere else. There's nowhere on the planet you'll find me. If there's a national at Southwick, I'm there. So it's been a huge part of my life up. And the last race, the indoor Supercross series, I already tied up the championship points. I crashed and broke my shoulder in 08 and had a serious head injury. I was knocked out for 5 minutes cold on the track. So I kept on coming back from the injuries. And one of the things that kind of kept me going was when I was 7 or 8, one of my neighbors was a big-time Schwarzenegger fan and introduced me to bodybuilding. So I started lifting weights at like 7 or 8 years old. And instead of bodybuilding, it was more like body rebuilding for me. I always I'd go from in shape, and then you snap your leg in half, and you got a little hairy twig of a leg 6 weeks later. It's amazing how the human body disintegrates with injury, and having to come back from all these injuries, including in 13, I fractured my wrist. I have a steel plate and 6 screws. I was battling in a race and high-sided. So I've had a lot of injuries, but I keep on coming back to it. And, in my head, I've probably quit racing a dozen times, but I don't know if I'll ever be done, So it is and always has been motocross, and now vintage motocross. That's our big thing. My son competed at Unadilla on his 89, and we did really well. If you watched any of the videos, I hole shot 5 out of 7 motos. He hole shot, I don't know the exact amount, but he got a couple first overalls, and he rides a Mako 400 in the pre-75 class, and then his CR 500. And there's nothing better than being a dad and seeing your son out there riding the bike that you rode in 89, the same exact bike.
Yeah.
So it's what keeps me going, and I don't ever feel like I work a day in life because I'm doing what I love to do,
And Ken, you got to forgive me. I jumped on there a bit about the museum. I didn't realize you had such a long career as an amateur and as a semi-professional racer. I did know, of course, about your Unadilla and Southwick days and the vintage and riding a 500, but I didn't know that you had a couple of decades there of swinging a leg over a motocross bike and competing at that level. So
yeah, and Joe, there was a decade in the middle that I call it the lost years, where I got married and had kids and started the business and got involved with the MC scene. I was a full patch brother. I was actually the road captain. My road name was 2001 for the 5th Chapter Motorcycle Club. It was a 1% club, and used to travel with those guys all over the place, ride Harleys. And I did a lot of bike games with those guys, and they didn't know about my racing history, but I'd show up to the Harley Davidson, like Harley Rendezvous style bike games, and I would win everything, the slow race, the fast race, so after 2 years of winning everything, they told me I couldn't compete at the event that they were having, the annual event they had here in Connecticut. So I bought my brother, and he bought a Sportster 1200, and he ended up cleaning it up because my brother's actually a better rider than me. He just never really applied himself. So we had a lot of fun in the Harley scene. As a matter of fact, I got if you wonder where the name Kaplan America comes from.
Yeah, I do.
That name came from, I was competing in this outlaw race called the Thunderdome. It's a little like 16th mile, real small, like almost like an arena cross flat track, and you could run what you brung. And I had I'm big time patriot, American, so I had American flag vest on and American flag open face helmet. And the announcer coined the name Kaplan America, and that was 2 years ago. I'd never competed in the Thunderdome before or the bike games there, and there were some, you know those new kids that ride the Harleys and they can ride wheelies straight up and down and in circles on Harleys and stuff.
Sure.
There was one of those kids there, and I was like, he's going to smoke me. But my son and I ended up beating him in pretty much every event. So I love, no matter how old you are and how busted up you are, there's always some sport you can compete in with motorcycles. And I've done drag racing, which is something old guys can do. I've done hill climbing. I got my picture in the paper going over the top of the hill at Munson. I've competed in enduros, terra scrambles, and also obviously at a very early age the trials thing with the mini bike club. But if it's got two wheels and a motor,
you're on it.
I'm interested. I don't give a shit if it's a little mini bike that someone dragged out of a dungeon or the biggest gold wing. If it's on two wheels, my dad used to say if you cut your head open, you see little motorcycles riding around in there. I can identify most motorcycles just by the sound of the motor, and I'm the guy 30 years at Daytona. There's 500,000 bikes there. Everybody goes to sleep. That's the other thing about me. I have a natural predisposition to not sleeping very much from a very early age. And when I was little, I used to sit in my brother and I shared a room. We had a walk-in closet. And it was full of motorcycle magazines, dirt bike, and I used to read the hunky columns and all the editorials. I'd read those books page to page, the early motocross magazines. And one of the things that inspired me to put together a motorcycle library at the museum, I got about 3,000 magazines and huge collection of manuals. And so I read a lot about motorcycles, and pretty much my entire life, I'm completely and totally obsessed with motorcycles. Every vacation I've taken as an adult, except for one or two that my ex-wife forced me to go on, like a cruise, and I was fucking miserable. It's been to Unadilla, Laconia, Daytona, Sturgis, all the nationals on the East Coast. I'm the guy at Daytona that when everybody goes to sleep, I ride my bicycle around the pits and down Main Street and looking at all the parked bikes, and I'm fascinated by motorcycles, and I'm nowhere near the mechanic you are, and I'm not a painter or a body guy, but I've seen so many motorcycles, and I've seen, and I have a really good memory because I don't drink or do drugs at all. So I was probably one of the few people sober at Daytona for the first year I went to Daytona. I was drinking like a fish and did some crazy shit, but I got in a little bit of trouble in '91, and I was given an ultimatum by my employer at the time, and I ended up quitting drinking and doing drugs. I used to party a little bit, and I've been sober ever since. So since '91, it's coming up on 30 years that alcohol. My kids never see me drink. I don't do drugs at all. I am a health nut. My girlfriend Christy is a fitness competitor and was a fitness competitor. I'm 55. She's 54, I think. So we're old, but we eat and we train 4 days a week. And since I got out of rehab, when I quit drinking and got out of rehab in '91, I had like a 20-day stint in there because I was drinking way too much, and they told me you're fired if you don't go to rehab. So I went to rehab, and I've been sober since '91. And when I got out, I decided to, I was really into fitness, and I had that introduction to weightlifting at a very early age, and I'd always been training, so I decided to dedicate my life to fitness. So I did a lot of powerlifting. Then I got into martial arts. I'm an instructor at Shaolin Kempo and Jiu-Jitsu dojo, and a lot of people don't know this, but my son got his black belt at the same dojo that I train out. He got his junior black belt, which is one of my life's biggest accomplishments. And my daughter, Taylor, competed in, destroyed the boys. She's a very big girl. She's like 6 foot and has been since she was like 14. And she beat the shit out of the guys 2 years in a row. So the martial arts is a big part of our life. Motocross is a big part of martial arts and motorcycles. And the weightlifting thing and the bodybuilding, I call it, well, it's body rebuilding, because my last injury, most people don't know about this because I didn't put it on social media for about a year. I actually broke my back racing at Central Village after winning my last championship in 15. And so I went back in 17 on a new 2017.5 KTM to a supercross style track in Central Village, Connecticut, that I cased a big jump and crushed 3 discs, and they told me there was like a 15% chance I wouldn't walk again. There was like an 85% chance they could fix it, and I was in a wheelchair for 2 weeks, and I had open back surgery, and they shaved 3 discs, and it was a success. So a lot of people don't know that because I didn't talk about it. I didn't want anybody I raced against to know that I was hurt that bad, because this was an injury that, for me, it was a career-ending injury, and and I was like really upset about it. So, but I came back a year to the day, a very year to the day, and the videos on YouTube of me on the line at Unadilla at the vintage event there, the vintage MX Rewind. And I told Junior, I said, Junior, I'm just going to let everybody go. And he goes, Pops, you got to put it in third gear and bang the whole shot. You know what to do. So he got me psyched up. And the year to the day of breaking my back, which is probably not the smartest thing, but or maybe it was the greatest thing. I don't know, but depends on if you talk to a doctor. But I went out in a whole shot, that moto, and ended up finishing like 4th or 5th. And that was like the rekindling of me getting back into vintage racing. So I keep going back to the motocross thing and the motorcycling, because that's why there's a museum. Junior's a huge part of that, too.
Well, hey, Ken, I've got to move on now to talk about the museum, because it's such a huge part of who you are. It's a huge thing in Rockville, Connecticut. And what I want to know is, when did that idea culminate, and how long was it from when you had the idea and the concept and till it actually opening up? I mean, you had to restore that whole building. Tell us about the building when the idea came about.
Well, there was a long period I was looking for a property to raise my kids at, and all the tracks I rode at around here in St. Pete got closed, and it's illegal to ride on the railroad tracks anymore. So I bought it in 2000 when Junior was a year old. I bought a 52-acre farm. We call it the compound. You might have seen the videos. If anybody's watching wants to see a video, just type in 500 shootout or the ATC trike event we had on the Kaplan America YouTube channel. I bought this 50-acre estate. It was a farm, and I turned it into a motocross park. We had motocross schools here. I have a lighted acre. I have 16 lights. We have a night riding track, and I have a 3/4 mile natural train track. And during the 10-year period that I've developed the compound, the tracks, the pond, the swimming pond, we ran Chris Canning, New England's number 1 pro rider, ran a little motocross school here for my kids. And while that was happening, I was looking for a facility to expand my computer company, because I own a computer company called Kaplan Computers. In fact, I still do. I've owned it for 30 years.
Okay.
I haven't worked there at all in 8 years. And I had a vision for that where I didn't want to lease. I was leasing a 40,000 square foot building, and it was costing me a shitload of money. And I was saying, I'm throwing my money away. So I wanted to buy a property, but we're in a pretty developed area. Manchester, East Hartford, to Hartford. We're halfway between Boston and New York City. It's a 2-hour ride either way, or right in the middle. So it's pretty well developed, and there were no industrial properties. And I was looking and looking and looking, and sometimes in life you have those experiences where it's like, wow, you have these moments where something seems just right. I'm a born again Christian. I believe in God. I have a lot of faith. I believe like God has a will for my life, and I've always tried to find that. And sometimes in life, when something just seems so like it to everybody else, kind of like when Noah built the ark, the his neighbors thought he was crazy, and I'm sure a lot of people think I'm crazy when they see a lot of what I'm doing. But in the end, it seems to work out because I believe it's God's will for me to do this. But once I got the compound, the farm, and the track and the house built and everything straight in there, I was looking and I couldn't find an industrial property. I had a deposit on one, it fell through. I thought about building one, and I ended up putting a deposit on a 20,000 square foot building that was already built. And I went to the town economic development coordinator, Sean Gately. I said, Sean, I want to move my businesses because I own a computer company. I owned an asset recovery company, which the only people in the motorcycle industry that know that I own that company is the people that I sponsored in 2003. We did about $10 million in services that year, and I had 54 employees, and we had 4 locations, and I owned an electrical contracting company with 8 guys called Primary Technology Solutions, and I had 54 employees working at Kaplan Computers and PC Worldwide, about an 80-20 split, most of them at PC Worldwide. We did a 57,000 computer deal with Pratt & Whitney, Otis Elevator, Hamilton Sunstrand, Sikorsky. I was a suit and tie. I used to cut my hair. I had long hair when I was with the 5th Chapter, when I was with the 1%er thing, and I had long hair when I was a kid. When I cut my hair, every time I cut my hair, I'd be, okay, we're gonna do $1 million in sales this month, and that's what this haircut's gonna. I was being somebody I really didn't want to be, suit and tie, and I was going into Fortune 500 accounts and selling asset recovery and data recovery programs. So,
Ken,
yeah.
tell me about the museum, brother. You have a very, very interesting life, Ken. And I'm sure it could go on for hours and we could write books. But the museum is so cool and I want to know so much more about it. So when did you buy the museum and when did you get to work on it?
Okay, the museum won't make sense unless you knew the background story, because you'll be like, why the hell on God's green earth would you buy an 11-acre industrial park with 150,000 square foot and 10 buildings in the middle of the city? I did it because I was going to move my asset recovery, Kaplan Cycles, and my companies into there. I ended up selling off PC. My ex-wife got PC Worldwide. She sold it. I kept Kaplan Computers. And the computer, during this 10-year period of trying to find a space, the computer industry changed, and there was not as much need for the PCs. A lot of the stuff was going online and the phones and that kind of thing. But so I had been looking for a long time for an industrial space. And in the back of my mind for 20 years since Junior was born, I had a plan 20 years ago. And when Junior graduated high school, I was going to retire from the motorcycle industry and open a shop with him and my daughters if they wanted to be a part of that. Both my daughters, Taylor and Jordan. Jordan is the only girl in the history of motocross to win a championship, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. Certainly in New England, no one's ever done it before. She won 4 championships in the 4 or 6 class. So I didn't buy this facility here to open a motorcycle museum. I bought it from my computer companies originally, and then once I bought it, I totally lost interest. I have not worked a single day in the computer industry for 8 years. And I've dedicated 100% of my time. So when I went to buy the property, I had that moment I mentioned earlier where I got out of the car after looking at all the properties that the town wanted to develop, and the economic development coordinator was with me. And we walked in between the 2 buildings, and I saw these massive industrial relics. The buildings were trashed, and I was kind of blown away by it, and it was my hometown is really Rockville that we're in right now. My mom was a nurse there, and I've been there since '74. I live in Tallinn, the next town over. So we struck a deal. I bought the property, and I started the first building. We started redoing building number 4. I was doing it for a local bike shop called X-Pro, and this is in 2012. We started working on that.
Okay.
And it was done in 2013. We had the ribbon cut ceremony, and I couldn't get it done in time. It cost me. These buildings are from 1814 up to 1906, and to get a building from that era up to if anybody listening wants to see what it looks like, go onto the New England Motorcycle Museum website. There's a before and after video, and you'll see what the place looked like when I got there. It looked like a bomb had gone off.
The place is absolutely fascinating, Ken, and what you did with it to make it really function as a more modern building, but yet without sacrificing the integrity and the history of it is really an amazing thing. And you're right. I mean, if anybody wants to see this, they've got to check this out at the site that Ken told you to go to. But Ken, these buildings had a special history before you bought them. What exactly were those buildings used for?
I mean, in 1814, it was the first building. Actually, building. They call it Building 3 now. The main building was built as a textile factory. They made suits for the U.S. Army. There were 13 mills like mine in town, and they were all gone by the time Y2K rolled around. All the wood ones, anyways. Mine is the sole remaining wood. It's a football. When I said Noah's Ark earlier,
yeah,
I literally took a picture of the place when the sun was setting, and ironically, I posted it, and somebody else posted a picture of Noah's Ark with the sun setting behind it, and it looked exactly like it. And it was kind of one of those bizarre moments where, and then I measured it. I was like, holy shit. And it's actually 20 feet longer than Noah's Ark from stem to stern, the buildings, and it's 4 feet taller, but Noah's Ark was a little wider. So Noah built his Ark out of new wood. I built mine out of 205-year-old timbers that a lot of them were rotting. So it was a ridiculous amount of work. The foundation was collapsing on one side. We had to jack one side of the building up with a bunch of 20-ton jacks. And I owned the construction company that did the work. That's another story. I'm kind of like a serial entrepreneur. I started a construction company called Rockville Construction and bought bulldozers, bobcats, excavators, dump trucks, all that. And I had 25 full-time guys work on that building for 4 years. So it was 100 man-years of labor on the main building. The first building I finished was a 4,000 square foot building, which we thought we could get done in short order, but there were so many roadblocks with the fire marshal and the building officials and the state historic parks office, because it is on the national historic list of historic places. There were a lot of restrictions, so there were two big buildings. 2 of the 12 buildings that were there had to be demolished, and they wouldn't give me a permit to do any work until I demoed 2 massive factory buildings. So we had and it looked like the town dump when I got there, and contractors, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it must be a duck, right? So contractors were going there and backing their trucks up and dumping garbage, and there was 100 dumpsters of garbage outside and 12 abandoned cars and trucks, and every building was waist deep full of rubbish left behind by other people. So there were hundreds and hundreds of dumpsters of garbage. Not to mention it was a tent city. So we live in a city of Rockville, and there was 2 homeless shelters and some drug clinics in the area, and a lot of homeless people and druggies had a tent city on my property, roughly 25 tents in the woods on 11 acres where the mini bike track is now. And getting those guys out of there was a whole nother story. Guys in the motocross community, again, my real family, I have my family, Taylor, Jordan, Kenny, but my motocross family, they showed up, and 15 of us, once we knew these people weren't going to leave, we camped out for 11 days in RVs and kicked these guys. They'd keep on coming back, they'd come back during the daytime drunk and pass out on the lawn, and there was graffiti everywhere. So we had a little battle there getting the homeless people out, and the contractors that still thought it was a town dump would show up from time to time and dump construction debris. It was really the bizarre thing. So I chased a lot of people out of there. So cleaning it up was...
So, yeah, and let me ask you this, though. I mean, because it's a historic site, I would have to imagine that the state or the city really, really got behind you and wanted to help. Would I be correct?
Oh, absolutely. The original mayor, I've been through 8 building officials. I don't know why we've had such a turnover. 2 fire marshals and 2. Our current mayor, Dan Champagne, is also a senator, and we're very close friends. He's been to every event we've had at the museum except for one. Every event, including the brew fests we've had there. He's a big proponent of what we're doing and has helped us. We probably would have failed without his help. Sean Gately, the economic development coordinator, has helped out a lot. The state of Connecticut, we're listed on the state of Connecticut Department of Economic Development Brownfield Group as a success story. If you go on the DCD site, you'll see the New England Motorcycle Museum on there. They have 4 success stories, or one of them. And my goal at first was to clean up the street scene, because there were trees growing out of the foundations. If you look at the before and after video, or if you do a Google search, I don't think they've updated it. You can do a Google drive-by, like on the 360-degree view, and see how bad it was.
Yeah.
But So, Disneyland, everything in the front looks great, but they're really steel buildings in the back. Well, my goal was to prop up the front and make it look like not such a scary place. And there were no street lights. I bought the other side of the street, too. I bought the acre and a half across the street, and I bought the house next door. I basically bought, like, that side of the city block, like 11 acres. And I did a 15-year contract with the power company to put street lights up. And so when you look at like, why are all the street lights facing our property? Well, we own them. We couldn't get the state or the town to put them up. So we lit the place up at night. My second favorite hobby besides motorcycling is restoring buildings and landscaping. I love running. I've probably got 3,500 hours on a Bobcat, and maybe 2,500 on literally thousands of hours on bulldozers. So I did every tree that was planted there, every tree that was cut down was me. I planted every plant, and I cut down every tree. And I didn't want anybody else to Edward Scissorhands the forest that was there because I didn't want them. I'm very hands-on, so I'm also insanely energetic, and I don't sleep that much. And we ran the first 11 days that we camped out there. We ran 2 shifts from 7 a.m. till midnight, and I worked both shifts. Mm-hmm. And there really wasn't anybody that really would even want to do that. I mean, you'd have to be crazy to do that if it wasn't your property. But we worked on cleaning it up. I had the police show up one day at 5 a.m. because I was running the Bobcat, and they're like, you can't start working until 7, So I was restricted to 7 to midnight. But we cleaned it up. We got it looking good on the street view. And then after that was done, we did building 4, which cost me $650,000 to restore a 4,000 square foot building, which I could have built a new building for less. A lot of those costs.
Well, Ken, let me ask you this, Ken. Did the state help out at all with some grants? I mean, you did save a historic site.
We've invested $7.5 million into the site. Actually, that was last year's calculation. It's probably closer to $8 million now because we're constantly working on it. And there's been masons that have been there for 8 years.
With the help of the state, Ken, or did Ken Kaplan write a check for $7 million?
No. According to my accountants, because I didn't really want to know, but we borrowed $2 million the first round of funding, and then we ran out of money, so we borrowed another $2 million. So we borrowed $4 million, and I was supposed to put up a minimum of 20%, and which would have been $800,000, and I've far exceeded that. So we did get a grant. The town got us a $75,000 grant it's a brownfield. It's a abandoned factory in the middle of the city that had lead, arsenic, PCBs, underground oil tanks, PCB transformers, coal ash, some things that I'd have to read. We had to do a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 3 environmental, and before we could get started. And then we have this thing called the remedial action plan. We spent about $1 million on the environmental cleanup, maybe $1.5 million. Again, it's one of those things I'm trying to think about too much because I'm not doing this for the money. I mean, I could have sailed off to Florida. I could have retired 8 years ago in mid down south doing vintage motocross riding, playing with bikes on a farm or something. I did this because I wanted to give back to my community and create a legacy that my kids could be a part of. None of them wanted I offered to give the computer business. Any of my kids, they didn't want to do it. They wanted to do the motorcycle business. So,
how many square feet of the building is finished, Ken?
We have there's building number 4, the bike shop, 4,000 square foot.
Okay.
Was listed as the first building in the history of Connecticut to achieve certified historic restoration status by the State Historic Parks Office to be used for industrial use. Most of them are for Section 8 housing because or controlled rent because there's huge subsidies.
Yes.
I'm not interested in doing that. So we got that one done. Then it took us 4 years and $5.4 million to restore the 45,000 square foot main building number 3, the one with the beautiful wood floors.
Yes.
And no corners were cut anywhere on the project. Nobody did anything there I was there from before the guys got there till hours after they left every single day. And today these days I show up and the construction's at a halt right now because we ran out of money. But it was 4 years, 25 guys, 100 man years labor, 10 man years just of masonry work. The building's a football field long and 35 feet wide, and there's 5 stories on one end that has a full walkout basement, and then one end is a slab. So there's a lot of windows, 287 windows. The windows had to be historic wood windows, which at this point I regretted getting involved with the State Historic Parks Office because they demanded that we buy these $1,200 wood windows, and I could have bought new Marvins for $300 that would last 5 times longer. So every window in the place is wood, and believe it or not, 8 years later or 6 years later, some of the new windows are rotting already. The wood isn't like it used to be. The ones that are down in the lower level, that's a whole other challenge. But it's an all wood building, and no corners were cut. Restoring it, when you go through it, you'll see the level of attention and detail. Every piece of metal from the basement to the attic was sanded, primed, and painted.
Ken, I've seen. I was there the day you cut the ribbon in. I guess it was 2016. When did you have the ribbon cutting ceremony? A couple years ago.
The first one is in 2013 for the first 4,000 square foot building.
No, I wasn't there in 13. I was there a couple of years ago when you did something.
Yep. That was 2018. That was the main building before. So at that point, we had 50,000 square foot of building done, and we also I have 2 shops. I have a detail shop where they do washing, detailing, light assembly, that kind of thing. Then I have the restoration shop where they do engines, transmissions, the real serious stuff. I've got 7 lifts in one shop and 7 lifts in another shop, and 4 A-techs in one shop and 6 B-techs in the other shop. And then, of course, we got the sales guys and me and Junior and a cast of characters supporting them. But so there was 50,000 square foot. That was what I'll call a grade A restoration. Mm-hmm. And then I've got another, the building with a detail shop there's a 5,000 square foot room and 2 2,500 square foot rooms that were not what I'd call a grade A restoration. It wasn't lipstick on a pig, pardon the phrase, but it wasn't quite to the level we did the main building because we've run out of money. I've run out of money at least 4 times, and a lot of people don't know this, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but I mean, there were points in this project where I couldn't pay my electric bill. Literally 2.5 years ago, my house electric got shut off because every red cent I had, things were costing me twice as much, and there were a lot of roadblocks. Some of the town officials didn't want a motorcycle facility in Rockville, and I figured that out a little too late. I don't want to, this will probably be heard elsewhere, and I don't want to disparage anybody, but let's just say that the bar kept on getting raised on the level of safety that needed to be in the building, specifically with the fire system. I think 7 inspections later, after we had done everything they wanted to do to the tune of $375,000, they brought a state fire marshal in, and even though it was to code, he said no. And I knew I was, when you meet someone, like, you're fucked right off Jump Street. Like there's no winning this situation conversation.
Well,
you got a chip on your shoulder.
Well, Ken, when
he walked in the door, I should have turned around and said, just handcuff me, because when he walked in the door with his protractor, his ruler, his tape measure, he was going up 205-year-old stairwells and saying, this stair is a quarter inch off, this stair is a quarter inch off. Our brand new stairwell that we had just built, he identified a stair that was off by 3/8 of an inch, and it didn't pass code. And he goes, I want a whole new stair tower put on this end of the building. Now, when you've got a 4-story, 45,000 square foot Noah's Ark building made out of wood, and they want you to rip one whole side of the electrical and the plumbing and redo the whole thing and put another stair tower in, that was a $500,000 setback. That set us back a couple of years. So there's been a lot of roadblocks. There's been a lot of hoops. There's things I didn't know about when I started this, like the buildings have been there 11 years, right? I mean 205 years, right? 205 years. The town knows where the buildings are. They have E2 surveys. They're on the map. They demanded a site survey, which cost me, by the time it was done, about $82,000 total. And all that did was identify exactly where all the buildings were. And I was like, they've been there for 205 fucking years. If you want to know where they are, why don't you just? That was the frustrating thing. There's been a lot of attorneys' fees in the 6 figures.
Oh yeah.
Over 100,000. Architect fees over $100,000. So attorneys, architects, and engineers, they wanted the buildings reverse engineered to make sure they were up to code. So damn near close to $100,000 in engineering fees. And there's 10 buildings, 150,000 square foot. So there's a large scope of work. At the end of the day, to answer your question, there's right now about 65,000 square foot that's completely restored of the 100,000+ square foot.
How many motorcycles do you have in there, Ken?
Right now we have 150 bikes that are going up for sale this week through the Kaplan Cycles website. There's 131 listed right now, which is a new record. I work twin back-to-back 80-hour weeks, listing bikes with my son and my staff. We have a massive inventory of a lot of project bikes, a lot of project dirt bikes.
Ken, how many show bikes? How many bikes do you have on display? I do want to talk about the auction because I think it's amazing.
Yep.
But I'd like the people to know, how many bikes do you have on display at the museum presently?
Usually on the 2 floors, there's between 250 and 300 bikes on display, vintage, classic bikes.
Okay.
There are some newer bikes mixed in there too. Like I have a real affinity for mid 80s and 90s motocross bikes, because so there's a lot of I have stuff like a 1990. I have Robbie Knievel's CR500 in there. I've got Doug Henry's CR250 in there. I've got a Ricky Carmichael CR250. I've got a Jeff Stanton CR250. So it's a motorcycle museum, right? But and I've got bikes from the 20s and the 30s. I have the president of the Antique Motorcycle Club of America, Ted Smith, is a very close friend of mine. A lot of people don't know this, but I'm also an ambassador for the AMCA. I'm listed on their website as the Eastern Connecticut Ambassador, and I'm also a judge. I judge motorcycle shows, AMCA shows at our facility and elsewhere. But I've got, like, in the collection, I've got the world's finest BMWs, and I'm pretty sure I've got the world's finest Triumph Bonneville 750 that Ted just finished. And I've got a lot of British. I've got Triumph. I've got A to Z Jap bikes, mini bikes, Buells, Harleys, Indians. I've got some weird overseas stuff like the Nimbus, and there's about 300 bikes. The second floor is mostly the vintage street and stuff, and then the third floor there's a lot of the off-road stuff on the third floor. And the first floor is got quite a few bikes, mostly ones we're selling right now. And then of course the restoration shop, the showroom, showroom is packed with bikes. There's usually 20 to 30 bikes in the restoration shop downstairs. In order for them to get started, they have to wheel they come in the morning, they wheel all the bikes out, because there's no room. And then they line up the 7 lifts and they get to work. Same thing in the detail shop. There's usually minimum 30, upwards of 100 bikes in the detail shop. And so there's about 150 bikes in production for restoration, and we buy and sell about 50 bikes a month. But after the COVID thing, in a 2-week period, we bought 150 motorcycles, because a lot of people don't know this, but Connecticut shut down all the retail showrooms, and there's a lot of motorcycle businesses here. We only have a 6-month season. I worked in New England cycle sales when I was a kid, and I had a career in the motorcycle industry as a setup tech, and then a repair tech, and then a parts manager. So I did work in the industry, and every winter everybody get laid off, right? So when does it start? Right after bike week. Everybody comes back. Well, right after bike week, they shut everything down for the 3 best months of the year. So a bunch of shops called me and liquidated a lot of their inventory to me, and a bunch of collectors who lost their jobs. So we bought 150 motorcycles in a 2-week period. As crazy as that sounds, I have a 44-foot Featherlight triaxle trailer and a 36-foot Pace and a 20-foot Featherlight and a 5x8. We have a bunch of trailers and trucks, and bikes were coming in by the droves, and that's this big auction that we had. A lot of that was stuff that came in, and some of the stuff that we're auctioning off has been in my inventory for years. And I was like, well, it's Junior's idea. Junior's like, Pops, you're never going to get to these things, and cash is super tight. So
Ken, where's the auction? When is it taking place? How many bikes are you auctioning off per day, or how does that work?
It's going on right now. It was a few weeks in the process of putting it together.
Okay.
Doing all the video. Kenny's working on it right now, putting videos up. We had the goal was to launch the auction Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and I got to jump on it Friday night and list. And it's a 1-week auction. It's all on eBay.
Oh, so all these bikes, 150 bikes, are all available on eBay, Ken?
If you look on there right now, this morning there was 131, and as soon as we get off the phone, Junior's got a stack of them that I got a list and put up, and the auction's going to end next Saturday. So it's unlike Mecum, where you get 5 minutes to analyze it. I haven't been to Mecum. I can't wait to go to Mecum. I'm a huge Mecum fan, and I'm definitely my life goal is to show up there with some bikes that we've restored that are second to none, bikes that I love, and sell them just to be a part of it. But for right now, that's not an option. We're too busy, and we're East Coast too, so the logistics are a bitch. But there's 131 bikes this morning that we listed. I started yesterday morning, Saturday morning at I think it was 7:30. I started listing them, and I posted my last bike up. They're time stamped too, so you can go on and see see this is true. They were going up in however long it took me, like 3 to 5 minute increments. I don't know, 10 minutes. Some took 10 or 15. But my last one I listed at midnight last night was a 2008 Road King Harley Davidson that with 1,800 miles on it. That immediately I woke up this morning. It had met the reserve at 12,500. When I checked, last check, 30 of the motorcycles, Joe, had met the reserve already. And it's exciting for me because these bikes, there's going to be 150 bikes, and there's a boat, and there's a bus, and there's some vintage bicycles and industrial bikes. There's maybe 10 supporting characters, but about 140 actual motorcycles. So it's our biggest month ever. We sold 66 bikes. So for our staff at 18 to pull this off is pretty huge. A lot of the bikes are project bikes that don't run, but roughly 30 of them are full. When I say restorations, they're not, Joe, a big restorations that will win concourse, AMCA. Your stuff is on point. These are when we do the restorations. If I do a concourse restoration on every bike, we try to value engineer the bikes, and so our average bike sells for $3,000 to $5,000.
Yes.
I'd venture to guess that your bikes probably start at 10. So there's a whole different ball game, and we do have a lot of $10,000 bikes that go out, but we can't do every bike like that. So for this
Ken, I don't. You couldn't possibly do every bike like that, but that's not what's important, really, because number one, a bike's only original once, and if the bike is nice and it runs, just get it out there, turn the money over, get the money back, and put it into something else. I don't. You don't have to do that. You have so many different avenues of making money and different ways of doing it. There's no need for you to spend that kind of time making something for lack of a better word, concourse or museum or whatever you want to call it. I mean, this is a huge undertaking, 150 bikes. Just listing them alone. How many people do you have at Kaplan Cycle working full time?
We have 18, and we just had Mario Testa. He's one of the Yamaha guys, Yamaha mechanics that goes to all the amateur nationals. He's a really high-end, really awesome tech that he's coming aboard. He's moving from Ohio to be a part of what we're doing. So we have another guy coming on board, and also the guy who runs Jeff Castine from All Sport. He's selling his shop. He's coming on board. So I have some guys that high caliber guys coming on board. We need more. I'm looking to hire mechanics right now and purchasing agents, and it's the hardest thing to find guys that know how to work on vintage bikes. So if anybody listening wants a career in this industry doing what we do, let me know. It's a difficult shoe to fill.
It definitely is. I've been down that road. Well, not with techs or mechanics like you have, but even finding people that take an interest in doing that type of work anymore. You mentioned your son, Ken Jr. He's a big part of the show. He makes videos for YouTube. Not every kid follows in his dad's footsteps. Was he always by your side, and he always wanted to be part of what was going on with the motorcycles?
Absolutely. There would be no Kaplan America. There would be no show. There would be no motorcycle shop, so to speak. I have some, I believe success leaves clues, and I have some mentors that are older than me whose kids are in their 30s, and I watched them grow up.
Uh-huh.
I have a memory of Billy Ainsworth Sr., whose son won the 125 support class at the National on a two-stroke. I'm a big Billy Ainsworth fan. Bill Sr. and his son, Billy's my age, a little older than me, maybe 62, and had his kids younger than me, and I watched his relationship with his kids. I'd go racing with him, travel with him and his wife and his kids. I was single at the time, and in my late 20s, and we would travel around racing, and I saw his relationship with his kids go from the 4 years old in the minis up to Billy Ainsworth, getting a 7th at the South of National and winning NESC championships and winning the national support class on the 125. And I saw how close they were, and I remember I have this distinct Technicolor memory of watching them float down the river in a tube in the middle of summer. Billy was probably 20 years old, and he had his arm around his dad, and they're floating. How many 18-year-old sons are going to float in a tube with their dad down the river? And his mom and Billy, his mom, she got the Moto Mom of the Year award one year, and she should have got it every year. She's awesome. So I believe that motocross keeps families close together, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. So from a very early age, I I had this plan when he was born. I was like, I'm not going to be in the computer industry, kissing ass and suit and tie and gone all the time. I'm going to do something I can do with my family. And we traveled for 10 years. I spent a ton of time with my kids, and Junior and Taylor and Jordan are a huge part of what we've done. So,
well, Ken, as I mentioned at the opening of the program, your show, Kaplan America, premiered this past week, Wednesday night on the Discovery Channel. I think there's probably a lot of misconceptions about how a show goes from concept to a pilot to actually making it to television. So can you walk us through the process and what you had to do to get interest in the network?
Really, it's all Junior. And I'll go back to that. I started the shop because I wanted to spend time with my son. I succeeded in having an awesome 15-year run with him, racing dirt bikes and my daughters and us camping together at the races, and grew up on the farm here. Like, we've had a really awesome life. And I have home videos of Junior walking around the house with my old big giant camcorder. When he was about 4 years old, he grabbed the camcorder, and he's a very, very, very smart person. He's probably smarter than me, and in some ways he's really good with people and everything, but he has a very high technical aptitude, and he started taking home videos at 4 years old, and everybody go, oh, isn't that cute? And he got a lot of positive reinforcement. So by the time he was 7, he wanted his own camera, and by the time he was like 10, he was asking for money for Christmas because he knew more about cameras than any of us. So, and by the time he was 12 or 13, he was working full-time at the bike shop with me. I bought him a Honda 50 Ruckus, and he put 12,000 miles on that little mini bike, little Honda 50 Ruckus, driving from Tallinn to Rockville every day, pretty much 7 days a week. And if we weren't at the races, we were at the shop. And his job was to every 99% of the videos for motorcycle sales are done by him. Hey, Christy.
Yeah, what is that? What do you got? Some birds back there, Kenny?
I have doves.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
They're in the background, and I was hoping she could put something over the cage. They're a little noisy, but they're getting a little rowdy. So where were we?
We were with your son Ken, loving to make videos. Yeah, obviously he's got a lot of videos of you and the shop and so much on YouTube. And what my question is how did it all transpire that you made a pilot and you got interest from the network to make a show? Or is that not what happened? How did it all happen?
That's clearly not what happened, and I lost my track because the doves were driving me crazy. But it's a short drive for me sometimes. But Junior actually won an amateur film festival and a motocross film festival where when he was like 15, it was a national worldwide thing, and he ended up he didn't win it. He placed 7. And when I talk about it, he's like, Dad, I got 7th. It sucked, But to me, I was always amazed at what he put together. He made us look good. And if you go on our channel, there's over 3,000 videos at this point, I think. And today, I think we're going to break 30 million views on the channel. To put that into perspective, Orange County Choppers has 9 million views, and they're a national household name. They have 9 million views on their channel. We have 30 million. Another good comparison would be Gas Monkey Garage. They're probably the premier reality show right now. They have less views on their channel than we do. And we just had, we haven't had an impact from the show yet, but I'm sure our views will go up. So Junior is awesome at videoing. He loves doing it. He's completely self-taught. And when the guys from Discovery, when we flew out to Hollywood to interview with those guys, they flew us out, and he was talking to the camera guys. We had a half-hour ride in the car, and they were talking. They might as well speak in another language. And when we got out of the car, they're like, "Your kid knows as much about cameras as we do." And by the way, the camera that he has, we can't afford to take him with us. So the production company goes, "We rent him." He's got an $8,000 camera he bought with his own money, and he rents like $10,000 lenses, really high-end lenses and stuff from time to time. But he owns a camera that Discovery uses, so that those guys use. So, and he knows his shit. So he makes us look good. And he captures a lot of the funny moments, and we have so much fun. I mean, there's the stressful days, there's the yelling, and anytime 18 guys working on bikes, it can be a shit show. We've had bikes burst into flames, we've had accidents on bikes, we've had engines stick wide open. There's always instances, right? So he's captured a lot of the funny moments.
So Ken, give me a second. The people from Discovery saw your videos on YouTube and then contacted you about making a pilot? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, we thought it was. To be honest with you, the only thing I can compare it to is when Judge Judy called me. We had a motorcycle. I bought a stolen motorcycle, and ended up. I found out it was stolen, and then I called the cops, and we ended up suing the guy, and we ended up. Anyway, in any event, we ended up being on Judge Judy for purchasing a stolen motorcycle.
Yeah.
And we ended up winning the case. And Judge Judy called in there, and I was like, "Yeah, right, it's Judge Judy." And I hung up the phone. And I was like, "You guys are full of shit." Yeah. And they called back and said, "No, it is Judge Judy, and we're going to give you whatever you paid for the bike. We're going to fly you out to Hollywood. We're going to wine and dine you and give you $300 cash a day." And I was like, "I'll do that." And so me and my employee who bought the bike ended up flying out to Hollywood. But anyway, I digress. So it reminded me of that. We get a phone call. Cody, our sales manager, gets a phone call, and he's like, "Hey, this is a Hangar 56. It's John Stevens, the guy from Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? They want to do a pilot." And I was like, "Yeah, right." And we'd always. That was right about the same time that you were discussing doing a reality show yourself, and you had paid for a pilot on your own, I believe. So they if I'm correct,
I had. Well, if you want to talk about that for just a second, I'd be happy to tell you about that. We did have an investor in Penny and Kevin Bridges who did put up some money, and then we had another angel investor who put up a little more money behind that, and we completed the pilot. But our direction, and I don't want to make this about me, Ken, it's because it's your time, and I want to make it about your show and how that developed. I never went to a Discovery or sat down with anyone from a network about my show because I don't believe they're going to give me the creative control that I want in order to bring a show that people who really know what they're looking at are going to want to watch. Your show, I think, is a little bit different, and it's also one of those things of where I think if a person who's not into motorcycles is going through the channels or they're looking at their guide and they see a thing that says Kaplan America and they click on that, you're going to get the attention of a guy that has nothing to do with motorcycles because you've got a cape on, dressed like Captain America, popping a wheelie on a mule going down the street in Connecticut. It's a whole different attraction for a whole different audience. That is not what I wanted to do. That's why I never went to any of those channels with my idea. But you obviously have a way to do that. You did that. You attracted someone's attention. You get to go out to Hollywood. They sit down with you. But from what I understand, and I've heard you say this, aren't there like 1,500 people a year that submit to Discovery for a show, and they narrow it down to 50, they narrow it down to 5, and then they give those 5 the money to make a pilot? Is that what happened with you?
It's actually 15. They narrow it down to 15. There's 5 business development, new show development people. I think 3 on the West Coast in Hollywood,
right,
where we went, and 2 on the East Coast. They have offices in New Jersey too, I think it is. But they get submitted 1,500 show ideas a year. I mean, I was on the phone this morning with a friend who's got one that did something Wayne Carini and blah blah. But a lot of people want to do reality shows, and they narrow it down to 150 that they request to send in all their stuff, and then they narrow it down to 15 that they actually put up. They paid $50,000. They put up these 15 characters, me and Junior being one of them. Were given $50,000 to create a Sizzler reel. We took 40,000 of that and went to the production company, and 10,000 we rented the Southwick National Track, and we staged an event there, a 500 shootout.
Okay.
Which no one's seen that footage yet. They've been to Southwick with us for 3 days. I took them to where I'm most at home. I took them to the track that Kenny's been at. Literally, I took Kenny to the Southwick National at 7 days old. He's never missed a Southwick National. And then I asked them to come to Daytona with us, and they went to Daytona and filmed Junior racing the 74 Mako and the 89 5. I didn't race. The whole Supercross thing at 55 is, with my issues, I didn't off the couch. I just wrenched for him,
Ken, is the footage that we saw on the pilot, is that Junior's footage, or is that footage that was shot by the people from Discovery?
I'm glad you asked that, because they put the people from Discovery actually were a subcontractor called Hangar 56, and John Stevens, he he's a very successful guy. He's had a couple Emmy Award-winning shows, sold his company for like $50 million, and now just does whatever he wants to do. And he was enamored by Junior and me and what we're doing, and he was looking for something to replace OCC, and so wasn't. There's been no motorcycle, with Indian Larry dying in an accident and Jesse James getting out of it. There's been no motorcycle shows for 10 years, so they were looking to either revive OCC or bring somebody in. So he saw that opportunity. He's the one who called us, not Discovery. He called us and said, we are recruiting. We're trying to get somebody into the final 150 and into the final 15. Send us all your stuff. And that's the guy that we hung up on the first time. I was like, yeah, right. And he called back.
Okay.
He called back John Stevens, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and all the people at Discovery because they made this possible. So John said, Junior, give me access to your YouTube channel. We signed some contracts. I had to hire an attorney. I've spent $20,000 on attorney's fees and copyright fees because this has been a really complicated process over the last year. But they solicited us. I didn't call anybody. I didn't have any idea. I always thought, geez, it would be great. Our YouTube channel is our future. I have friends that are making $300,000 a year on our YouTube channel. Right now, we get paid about $60,000 a year for our YouTube channel, about $5,000. Not enough, but it's something. We get about $5,000 a month for 2.5 million views a month, and we're just about to break 30 million, and it's going up exponentially. But they contacted us. The production company, Junior gave them access to all his footage, and they put together a kick-ass 6-minute reel with no footage, no new footage, and asked me to write up a biography on me and Junior and Christy, and we sent it in, and it was accepted. They liked it, and they picked us as one of the 15 finalists. So that Sizzler reel that he did was the original one was from all our footage. The second one, when they got the $50,000, they flew out here and followed us around to Southwick and around the shop and took a bunch more of our footage and created the Sizzler reel that got us to be the final. I don't know if you know Ronnie Mack from the YouTube guy, former pro racer, has got this kind of funny.
Yeah, sure. The guy with the Pabst Blue Ribbon helmet.
Yep, and you know the snowmobile guy out of Canada?
No, I don't know him.
There's a snowmobile guy, and there was some. I knew who like 3 of the final contestants were, and I kept getting phone calls. Well, they eliminated him, and they called me up and they said, "You guys are it." And I go, "Okay, what's next?" So they said, "We're going to fly out to Hollywood. You got to get an attorney. My normal attorney couldn't do it. You have to hire a special attorney for this kind of stuff." And so we hired the attorney, and we got the contract, and they put up $450,000, and they came to. They came to Daytona with us this year. Filmed a bunch, like probably 24 hours of filming there. They followed us around to. I've been to Daytona 30 years in a row.
Ken, they put up $450,000 to make what?
To make the show that's on their channel right now, Discovery Go.
So the show we saw the other night on Wednesday night. That's a 450. I'm sorry.
Actually, think about it. They paid the production company. They didn't pay us the $450,000. They paid the production company the $450 and the original $50 that we got an $8,000. Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to be talking about this because we're under contract, but there was a small site fee that they gave us, and then each of us got $3,500
right
for acting. And I'll tell you, I could make $3,500 in a day. And we worked on this thing for months,
right?
So like 9 months. So it was a lot of work, a lot of back and forth and editing and filming, and it was a lot of work. But,
so then, Ken, tell me this: how much creative control do you have over the show? In other words, they come in, they want to make the pilot we saw the other night. Are you able to tell them, here's what we're doing. We're doing this Montesa VR. We're flipping this Can-Am, and we got a Mako. And this is what we're doing. Who creates the storyline? Who does the blocking? Who sets up the whole time sequence? You or they do?
That was a huge concern of mine. I'm not stupid. I didn't just fall off the turnip truck yesterday. So I did a ton of research on Jesse James. I watched 17 of his interviews. I watched all of OCC, senior and junior interviews. Anybody who's had a reality show, I watched their interviews, like the one you're having now, and hopefully the truth comes out. And I knew that things could be spun down the wrong track if I didn't have control. And in fact, at first, when the first week they were shooting, they wanted me to film a scene where I called Kenny stupid, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I love my son, and I made it clear. I said, unless you want to write me a check right now for $7.5 million and pay off this facility, and I'll give you the last 10 years of my life for free, but pay off what I've got into this. If you want to do that, then it's your show. But until then, I've got to have some control. So I negotiated. They didn't want to do it. Discovery's, to my knowledge, never done this before. Gave a first-timer executive producer rights. But if you look at the credits on the show, I'm an executive producer. So I had a lot of, listen, Joe, the whole character thing, I'm not doing that to entertain vintage motocross guys like you or Tony D. I'm doing that because you and the guys listening to the show right now are what I'll call 1%ers. They're 1% of the population that are obsessed with motorcycles like you and I are. Yeah. Actually, you and I are probably 1/10 of 1%ers because we dedicated our entire waking life, and if you could read our dreams, they're probably about motorcycles. But we're weird. We're the small part of society that loves motorcycles this much and dedicate our lives and risk our lives racing them and everything, right? So
absolutely. So they gave you creative control, a first timer, and you're able to make up the storyline. You made up the storyline, the blocking and all that. You said, well, the cameras are going to go here, and I'm going to come in and talk to Junior this morning about a Can-Am. You did that. You get to do that.
Absolutely. As an executive producer, in fact. Now, we go back to Junior's skill set and the fact that he's been shooting in the museum for 8 years.
Yeah.
He was instructing them on where the best lighting is, what time of day it comes through, what settings to have on their cameras, for the lighting, and which lights should be on and off, and which angle is the best to shoot from, and where the audio should be. My son's he's extremely intelligent. So I was given the executive producer credit, and I was allowed to have a lot of input. In fact, there were 4 revisions of the show. Christy, myself, and my inner circle of people have watched the show 14 times. Christy and I together pretty much every time. And the first revision, I didn't like it. It was when I talked about the cave thing. I want to finish that thought. It's not about you and me and the guys listening. It's about, and let's face it, only 5% of the society give a shit about most. The other 95% of society probably don't like motorcycles. So I was thinking, how do I get not only 95% of the other side to believe in us and also the children? I want the line at Southwick went from 2 rows of 50cc riders in the 70s to 4 or 5 now. It's dying. We're in a dying industry. Harley Davidson stock went from $80. They got kicked off the NASDAQ. They shut down a factory. They went from 360,000 motorcycle production down to under 100,000, 80,000. They're down 70%, laid off 5,000 people. The shops, until the COVID thing, all the Japanese motorcycle manufacturers weren't doing well either around here. I've had Suzuki dealers that were in the business for 40 years that shut the doors because they weren't selling enough bikes. 3 of the major dealers in a 20-mile radius of me were committing felony offenses to keep the doors open and went out of business. So I understand clearly we have to get the next generation. It's not about Joe. You're already sold. It's not about anybody at Mecum. They're already sold. We have to show them that wonderful father-son and daughter relationships, American pride in our country, cleaning up your neighborhood, resurrecting old buildings, picking up trash, not drinking or doing drugs, and being a good American citizen and being honest and kicking ass is still the American way. And if I can do that, and if I have to do something wacky like wheelie a Buell with American coupon to get people's attention, I'll do it. But if they watch us long enough, they'll see there's a loving family, great father-son relationship, and a true American, and a patriot, me and my friends, and the people that race, that we are good people. The people that are 1%ers and the people that are in the RCs, the Riders Club, like the Moose Club, the Harley Owner Group, they may look like, weekend warriors, but they're mostly good guys, so 99% of them. So it's about making motorcycling a mainstream hobby again, getting people involved. Listen, who can afford a $60,000 OCC chopper? Not you, not me, and not most people can justify spending $60,000. Certainly not the 95% of the population. So what were they watching? They were watching the father-son drama. I refused. I drew a line in the sand early on. I'll throw you down the stairs by your face if you ruin my son or my relationship. That's something no one's ever coming in between him and I. It's just not going to happen, all right? So I let him know I'm not calling my son stupid. I'll call him stubborn if he's being stubborn, but there's going to be no fake drama. If you want to show up with a camera and follow us for a week, there'll be plenty of fun, funny stuff and drama. But I'm not going to, as much as I want this, I'm not willing to sacrifice my principles and my honesty and my integrity or my family love for a show.
So what you're telling me, Ken, is that when we see future episodes of your show, we shouldn't be expecting any made-up or fake drama, because we know there's plenty of real drama in real life. So there's not going to be any made-up stuff. You're going to be shooting straight with everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, the motorcycle theft scene, a good friend of mine, John Greer, who moved from his family from California to be here.
Yeah.
He's a pilot. He flies like Jack Black and the Kardashians, and he's a private jet pilot and flies celebrities around. That's what he does. He's gone a lot, flying people around. He came back in his 3 CR500s, 2 of which he just had an offer for $23,000 on 2 of them. They're nicer than any of my 500s. As a pair, $23,000. They were stolen and found on somebody had them on for sale on Craigslist, and apparently they had bought them for $1,100 from the person that got the bikes. And I can't tell you too much more than that because I just can't. But
well, didn't we?
That was a real thing that happened the week. And while they were there, there's there's 3 motorcycle theft rings within a 50-mile radius of my museum. 3, and they steal a lot of motorcycles. So not a week goes by that a bike isn't stolen. And because I have such a huge following on social media, I'm the best way to get the word out. You know, we've got I think 12,000 followers on Facebook. And then there's the Instagram, and then there's the 72,000 subscribers on YouTube and 2.5 million views a month. So when a bike's stolen, if I put the word out, it's probably better than the cops.
So the other night when we were watching the pilot episode, when you're in the parking lot, you've got a guy there and you got him surrounded and stuff. Did he steal the bikes, or did he buy the bikes?
No.
What happened?
He bought the bikes for $1,100 apparently.
Oh yeah. Now I remember. Yeah.
Well, think about it. It was $1,100 for 3 $8,000.
Right.
CR500s. Actually, one of them's a $15,000 bike. His captain, he's got a CR500. You might have seen it. It says 1776, and then on the number plate, and it's like red, white, and blue. He's a real patriot too, and it says John 3:16 on the swing arm. He's a Christian, born again Christian like me. So there's a lot of biblical stuff on his bike like mine. But so can you picture buying not only those 3 bikes, but his toolbox for $1,100? Something's fishy, right?
So Ken, let me ask you something. You get this guy, you get him in a corner. He says, "Well, I bought the bikes from a guy on Craigslist for $1,100, and I saw the episode, and I saw that you recovered the bikes. Did you track down the thief, the guy who actually stole the bikes?"
Yes, we know exactly who it was, and I
You
can't
do?
say who it is at this point for maybe obvious reasons, maybe not so obvious reasons. That would be up to John Greer, I guess. So.
All right.
Let me. I'll give you one clue. It was friendly fire.
All right. I know you've got to look. You're doing some things to help out. Probably the police recover bikes. There's going to be thieves involved. I mean, you could only say so much. I don't want you to say more than you have to. And I guess my next big question is, when will you know that you're going to get a full season out of this show? Are there ratings tabulated? How does the brass at Discovery know what's going on and whether Kaplan America is going to get 13 weeks?
It's a bunch of factors. The Nielsen ratings, they have it on Discovery Go, so how many times it's watched after that. They also have what's called a focus group that watches the show and gives them feedback, and that's how we ended up on the family comedy night instead of the motor block. We were a follow-up to Dodgeball, which was a dud. They only had, the views weren't that good on Dodgeball, and they did 0 advertising for our show. The only advertising, there wasn't a single commercial or billboard. The only advertising was what me and Junior did on social media and YouTube. So we talked to the producer last week, and Discovery's discussing putting the same that first episode up again on a night where there's more viewers, like the Monday Night Motor block. So it's a combination of factors. The feedback of it's the brass at Discovery who have been awesome. They've been really good with us from the beginning. We wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for Discovery. Obviously, they funded the whole thing.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, there's no extra money in this business, as you know. It's a very tough business to just make ends meet, which is about what we do. But there's no way on God's green earth I could have come up with $500,000 to produce the show. And at the end of the day, the show that you saw, 20+% of the footage is footage Junior had previously shot on our actual real scenes in our shop. I'm going to say a quarter of it.
So right,
the rest of it,
yeah. So right now, Ken, you don't know if you have another 12 weeks coming.
No, we have a 3-year contract with Discovery. They have options for up to 3 seasons, I guess it's called. And let me give you a snapshot of, like I told you, I watched a lot of OCC's interviews and I've read their books, and I consider those guys one of the high watermarks as to what they accomplished in their career. I mean, let's face it, they were on the halftime of the Super Bowl show, right?
Oh, sure.
They were,
absolutely.
People that don't like motorcycles like watch those guys, right? And that's they had a pilot show on September 23rd of 2003 that they had worked on for a while. I know the background of that, read up on it. I know what it was, and they found out on the first show people were more interested in the father-son drama than they were the bikes, and that was attracting the 95%, not the 5% or the 1%. So they kind of went with that, and they didn't have an order for a show. They did a pilot in September, and then if you do the research, you'll find out that Discovery ordered a second pilot, is what they called it. They didn't commit to. I mean, these shows cost them. If they order a series of 7 shows, that's $3.5 million is what it takes, because they put like 4,000 hours into crafting that show, and the guys that are showing up are all Hollywood pros, and they got to fly them out here and follow us around for 10 days. It gets expensive. They sent 13 people here for 8 days, including 2 of the execs from Discovery. It's a big commitment. So they want to find out. I mean, also, let's face it. Hey, the country's in a bad spot right now. I mean, it's dangerous to even have an American flag on your car driving through the certain areas. And here I am, draped in an American flag. I don't think there's a scene in my video and our thing with it. I mean, I'm a patriot, right? And I'm obviously a red-blooded American, and I'm a white red-blooded American, and I believe in family values. And I don't know, it just seems like the country's depressed. It's in a bad spot. I'm not sure patriots are I wasn't even sure they'd show this show afterwards, because the whole motorcycle thing, and the fact that I'm a little bit of a vigilante, recovering the motorcycles. I wasn't sure, but they showed it, and so with OCC, they did another pilot in March. It went out, and after that pilot went out, things go slow in Hollywood. Apparently, I mean, we've been working on this thing for over a year, and the pilot was done. It was done in late March. Here it is 6 months later. It finally shows. See, the world's messed up right now. Hollywood was shut down due to the COVID thing for 4 months, and to still some degree it still is. Like, movie theaters aren't open. It's a crazy time we live in. So I don't know what the future is going to hold. I can say this: I'm super grateful for John Stevens and Charles and all the guys at Hangar 56, that JJ and Garrett that busted their ass around the clock. And they spent a lot of time at my house. We did the 500 shootout at my house, and we went to Southwick, and they were like in our inner circle for weeks. They went to Daytona, Southwick, the compound, and my shop. They followed us around for weeks and filmed hundreds of hours of stuff. So super grateful. John Stevens is incredible visionary. He found us on YouTube. JJ and Garrett found us on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Saw one of our videos, and they liked the whole vigilante, the character. And I think if I was just doing bike repairs, we might not have got a shot for our show. So because they want to capture the 95%, the 5% doesn't pay. The 5%, you and me, and the 1%, you and I, the 1% of completely obsessed motorcyclists, our views don't cover the $10 million it costs to put. The attorneys told me the value of a primetime Discovery show is $10 million. And my attorney told me, keep your mouth shut about the money. Don't worry about the money. I've got a 6-figure investment in doing the show myself because, between attorney's fees and shutting down our normal course of business while they're filming, and it was a big investment. And I made a lot of improvements to the shop, knowing that they were coming and it was going to be filmed. We put a portable paint booth in, and I've been working with OSHA to make sure, mainly OSHA, to make sure everything's up to par. But I guarantee you, if they walk into most shops, there's going to be violations everywhere. So, everything was up to par. And it is up to par. So,
Is the name Kaplan America registered trademark? Do you have that registered?
Oh yeah, that was a trademark and copyrighted, thanks to Christy and my attorney, Brooke. She's an attorney for the John Lynn. She's a very prominent Hollywood attorney, and she's incredible. She's been super awesome, kind of coaching me through this, and really grateful for her and her team. So between the attorneys and my team, the guys. Hey, Joe, this isn't me in a shop. It's 18 guys, man. Without my guys, without the Wizard and his son Shane and the Professor Billy and Doc and all the guys, Ronnie, without my team behind me, I'm nothing. Without my son, there is no show.
So Ken, I agree with you, and I know you're an extremely grateful person. There's only so much you can do, though. In other words, what I want to ask you is two things, really. Providing you get picked up and you get 13 shows, what would be some bikes we could expect to see on there, and will you have control over that? In other words, what will we see?
Absolutely. You'll see the same things you're seeing on our YouTube channel now, and I encourage anybody who's listening, go on the Kaplan America YouTube channel, and if you have an hour, try scrolling through all our videos from the beginning. You can sort them from oldest to newest or newest to oldest, and there's probably not a Japanese bike made from 1969 to 79 that we haven't worked on or filmed or ridden. Literally thousands of motorcycles. So we're not going to change and all of a sudden start resurrecting 1901 Indians, because we don't know how to do that.
Right.
We're working on you're going to see a lot of CR 500s. You're going to see American Muscle. You're going to see Harleys. We're actually building. I'm a big FXR guy. Back to my 1%er days, I rode a Harley FXR. That's the choice for the club riders. And I've been building FXRs for 30 years. And right now we're building an FXR for my son that he wanted it to be black and gold. And the painter's like, "What are you guys crazy? Your show's Kaplan America. Your dad's Kaplan America. Let's make it red, white, and blue." So I don't want to say too much, but it's going to be a real special red, white, and blue theme hot rod FXR. And I have a hot rod dyno, so you'll see Harleys. You'll see a lot of Japanese Enduros, because my son's obsessed with the 68 to early 70s Enduros and all the stuff that we like. You're going to see more Harleys, more Buells, and expect to see a shitload of badass CR 500s. I'm working with the best CR 500 gurus on the planet, AJ Wagoner and Adam Millar, building Junior a motor that's going to be. Our goal is to win a sanctioned AMA amateur race against the best riders in New England on a 31-year-old 89 CR5. It'll be 32 next year.
Okay.
So he's almost done that. He's led 15 minutes of a 20-minute race against the best amateurs in New England on a 30-plus-year-old bike. So our goal. So expect to see more of that. Expect to see Daytona footage. Mid-Ohio. I love Mid-Ohio. It's my number one vacation, going there with my family and friends and riding 70s bikes around. And if you haven't been to Mid-Ohio, go.
I have. I've been there. So in other words, Ken, your show is going to always have a mix of different bikes. It's not really geared toward the vintage motocross scene, although I know that's where your heart is. There's going to be an array of bikes. The other night when I was watching the show, you had the Montesa up there on the lift, and at the end of it, do you feel that enough justice was given and enough time was given to that bike to make it what it was? We saw the paint job get done overnight. I get that, but did they cut you short on how much time you actually want to spend on a project like that?
Absolutely, because they were there they had 8 days. They had their plane tickets there, and they had their plane tickets back, and they came with us on the pick, which we did on a Sunday. We had the pick scheduled beforehand, and they said, "Don't go there. We don't want you to go there and see what's there. We want you to be surprised as we are when we get there, so it'll be real." So I'm a big Paul Pincinot fan. He's a 5-time national hill climber, and going to his place was awesome. But I'd never been there before, and I had to pick a bike out of his collection, and my brother had a 72 Rickman with his untapped motor. So when I saw the Rickman, it tugged at my heartstrings, and I said, let's do the Rickman. And to do a Rickman in a week is absolutely freaking ridiculous. And you know that because you do this. The only way we pulled it off was Wizard and Billy and Doc worked together along with Shane, sourcing parts and overnight stuff. And then we had
you pulled off an amazing rebuild, no question about it, within a week.
Yeah, it was. We haven't seen him out. We did a lot more work on that bike after
Right.
they left. Engine work and clutch work and other things were done. The paint job came out phenomenal, but to do that in 1 week and then bring it to Southwick and run it was a great accomplishment. And in that same time, in that same week, we did the footage you didn't see, which we took one of his hill climb bikes and restored it, and we rented the Southwick track. And Junior, it was a head-to-head battle, Junior versus Senior. I was on an XR 750 Harley Davidson hill climber, and he was the American Pride bike, and he stretched a national, I mean a badass Harley. And he was on the CR250, and he beat me. He beat me on the CR250, son of a gun. So I guess you got to get beat. Right? There's things you didn't see on the show that happened. It wasn't the other 14 guys or whatever working on other stuff.
Sure.
Including putting Junior's bike together and setting up the XR 750, and we filmed a lot of drag races on those. And then we had the event day at Southwick. There's an actual event that we filmed. That might be in episode 2 if there is one. And even if they're at the end of the day, Joe, being I don't consider myself a Bible thumping super religious guy. I love your posts. I know you're Christian, and I love your posts, but I don't go around beating people to death with my more spiritual.
No, I don't beat them over the head with it either. I mean, my spiritual gift is not evangelism. I post what I post every night, and if it gets through to somebody, it gets through. My spiritual gift is encouragement, and I like to encourage people and help them, especially in the vintage motorcycle world. I've done that for a very long time. I continue to do that every week, whether it's with a show like this or whether it's my Wednesday show or any post that I put on Facebook. So, but I know you are a man of faith. You have a lot of passages around the museum that I've seen, and I think that's great too. And it's something that if that comes across on your show, should you have future episodes, I think that's something that really America needs to sink their teeth into again as well. Now, I've got to ask you this, Ken. I'm a fan of the show. I liked the pilot. Are there some things that I didn't exactly embrace completely? Yeah, but that was only because I know what it would really take you to do that. But I think the show is a great step in the right direction, and that I think it'll get traction as time goes on because you say you have creative control and you're the executive producer. With that being said, they say flattery and criticism should be thrown down the same drain. You've been dealing with a lot of flattery. A lot of people are waving the flag for Kaplan America. But, you got a couple of sticks in the mud, too, that don't necessarily embrace the show. How are you dealing with the good and the bad?
Well, before I address that, I want to say, I don't know if you noticed, but I would say 9 out of 10 of your spiritual posts, I repost them.
Yes.
Because, you've already done the work, Joe, and it's great stuff. So, but it touches my heart, too. And I want to give to God the results of both the project, the museum, the mill, whether my son stays with me there forever and takes it over. All this is in God's hands. I believe I'm living God's will, but the results are in His hands. And the reason that's important is if the show goes on, if the museum goes out of business, it's God's will, okay? If we don't make it as a business, it's God's will. And I can hang my head high and move on. If the museum is a blazing success and is a national treasure and worldwide renowned treasure, that's God's will too. So it takes all the pressure off me. I just show up like Noah and work on the ark every day. And amazingly, the ark got rebuilt and is ready to sail. So and it's become a national treasure. So it's all Him. I give it all to Him. And it takes all the pressure off me. When I do sleep, which isn't that much, I probably sleep on average 5 hours a night, sometimes 6. The best night of sleep I got was at Daytona this year. I slept like 8-10 hours or something like that. But in any event, what was your question?
My question is, how are you dealing with the flattery and the criticism of the show? A lot of people are behind it, Ken. I am one of those people. But you got a couple of people that, I think they've got too much to say about the show. I think they've got too many negative things to say about you personally, which I don't think is fair. So I just want to know how, in your mind, how are you dealing with the positives and the negative? And I think I know the answer. I think you put God. Go ahead.
I turn it all over to God, and of course, we have 2.5 million views a month on our channel from people all over the world.
Yes.
And the amount of I monitor. There's a YouTube studio program, and I monitor every single comment usually twice, sometimes three times a day, and mainly for the encouragement. Because Joe, I'm not making any money doing this. I've averaged investing $1 million a year into the motorcycle industry. I've done mini bike mania events where that cost me $20 grand and gave away striders to 20 kids, and I've invested my life savings into this because this is what I love more than anything else, and I believe it's a thing that saved my life is motorcycles, my passion for motorcycles. So I want to give it away, right? You can't keep it unless you give it away. So the amount of the outpouring of love that I get from people, some of them not even in the industry, I can't joke. My phone was blowing up the night of the airing until 1 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't keep up. There are so many tags on my inbox, it blew up. I'm tagged in so many posts. I think it taps out at 500,
right.
And I couldn't download them all. It locked up, so it's still locked up. And my phone rings all the time, and I try to answer all of them. And 9 out of 10 of them, actually 999,000 out of 100,000, 999,999 of them are, listen, you inspired me to get off the couch and start working out. You inspired me to get a dirt bike and start riding again. Jimmy, who works for us, had heart replacement surgery. He literally had tears in his eyes the day I let him start volunteering. And the shop is a little bit of risk with that, obviously, and become a big. I have a guy with heart replacement surgery that was inspired by us and who raced at Unadilla with us this weekend, 51 years old, heart replacement surgery. I've got guys that are. There's so much positive feedback that, I believe in God, and I also believe in Satan. And I believe that some people are tools of Satan that are so negative and it's sad because the only way they make themselves feel good is to try to tear down somebody that's doing probably much better than they could ever dream of doing.
Amen. I agree with you, Ken. I couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more.
Joe, I ran a volunteer service company for 3 years. I did over 2,000 hours of volunteer service cleaning up our city, all the graffiti. I do a lot for our town, and I've had people from Hawaii, Ocala, Florida, all over the world send letters, and you inspired us to do something like that here. So there's so much positive, and it makes. And I said I'm not doing this for the money, obviously, right? Because I've spent so much doing this, I don't think I'll ever get it back, and I don't care about that. Obviously, this is what I wanted to spend my life on. I mean, you're rich if you're doing what you love to do for an avocation, and you're doing it, and I'm doing it. So the one or two, I feel sorry for them. It's sad if they're that miserable. I've never in my life gone onto a social media platform to try to tear somebody down. So I'm like, even if I don't agree with what they're doing, I just move on. But to take, if your life is so empty that the best thing you can think of doing with your time right now is try to look at someone like me who's doing something great for his town and for his industry and with his family and who's a patriot, to try to tear me down or be jealous. It's just, I feel sad. I think the best answer is pray for people like that, But the overwhelming positive response, and dude, look at the guest book that we keep in there. People from Brazil, from Japan, from Ireland, from the UK, from England, from every state in the United States have been there. They're coming in droves to visit what was an abandoned. It was Satan's kingdom when I got there. It was the symbol of decay of our city, and I turned it into a beacon of hope that's attracting people. Why do you think the senator, the mayor, the state, everybody, the guy who ran for governor, he didn't make it. He won like 40% of the votes, but they're all excited with what we're doing. Whether or not we ever have another show, what we've accomplished is remarkable. And like I said, the results are, if it's going to happen, it's got to be God's will. So the negative hater, there's always, go on. I encourage you to do this. Go on to Orange County Choppers YouTube channel right now when we're off the phone here, and then go on to Gas Monkey Garage's channel and look at how there's much negativity on there.
Ken, don't think I haven't done it already, because when I shot what I shot and looking into researching and developing a show the same way you did, I see what goes on out there, and I see the verbal lashing, the verbal beating that some people take, and it's disgusting in a lot of ways. Look, I'm not saying that every reality show. Look, let's put it this way. Let's get away from what you and I know that burn gas and roll. Look at these shows like these housewife shows. I mean, who could possibly watch that and think that actually goes on? So if somebody wants to go on and say something bad about a show like that, I kind of get it, because it's insanity. Okay? But how can I say it? Some people can just see through when they're being sold a bill of goods. And when it comes to a reality show, you know, and we've all seen that. But that doesn't give everybody a right to just chop up somebody personally, you know. I mean, if you're going to say something bad about the show, that's one thing. But to attack a guy personally, I don't agree with that. So anyway, Ken, I want to thank you for the time you've given me today. Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Well, actually, no, I pretty much covered every question that I had for you, and you jumped in with a lot of really, really great information as well. So, my guest today has been Ken Kaplan. Visit his YouTube channel. Go to the New England Motorcycle Museum if you can, or go look at it on Facebook. And don't forget, tune into the Discovery Channel when the Kaplan America episode pops up once again. And I'll be looking for it too, Ken. And if there's anything I can do from my end to help out, just say the word. You know I'm there for you, brother.
Amen. Thanks, Joe. And to anybody who's listening, hey, you only live once, and you're going to be dead a long time. So get out there, write down your 2 favorite things that you like to do, or 3, on a piece of paper right now, and then analyze how much of that have you been doing lately. And if riding bikes is on the list and you've only ridden 10 times this year, get out in your garage, make a commitment, ride every day. I run this Ride 365 commitment. The best I've done is 320 days, and I broke my foot. But right now, this year, I've ridden all but 6 days. And those 6 days that didn't work was because we were totally obsessed getting ready for the auction or filming or something crazy was going on. But try to ride every day. Give your bike some love. And if you're ever depressed, just go out in the garage, fire up your bike, and listen to the engine, because it's the best elixir. It's better than alcohol or drugs. And do some push-ups. Take care of your body.
There you go.
Physically, mentally, spiritually. And try to work on. If your life's so miserable that you need to try to tear other people down, work on your spiritual condition, because you're spiritually bankrupt. If that's the best thing you can do with your time.
There you go. Words of wisdom from Kaplan America this morning. Ken, thank you again. I'll be speaking to you.
All right. God bless you, Joe.
God bless you, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. My guest this morning has been Kaplan America, Ken Kaplan. I want to thank our sponsors once again. Kurt Leverton, Vinco, Keep the Ride Going. Russell Waters and AMSOIL, the first in synthetic oil since 1973. My good friend Mark Hildebrand at Nightmare Racing, the world's finest reproduction Kawasaki plastic on the planet. Thank you, Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing up there in the Great Northwest. You got some rims, spokes, lacing, truing. He's doing it all for the vintage and the modern guys. Chris Carter, thank you so much, my friend. You at Motion Pro, with all the specialized tools, controls, and cables. And, of course, Preston Petty, my friend Paul and Patty Stainerd, who have been taking care of us with Preston Petty products for some time now, and also sent me a wonderful box of sausage and some other great things that Susie and I have been enjoying. Once again, remember that next Sunday, September 20th, my guest will be 3-time AMA National Champion, Tony DiStefano. This is Joe Abadi. Thank you for listening to Vintage Motocross Radio. Have a great week.